Some questions
Oh, no,
at the
please
end.
do.
Yeah,
Okay,
Okay.
we're ready.
Yeah, let's just,
Go for it.
gosh, you know, I think that this is like a victory lap. You know, hey, we got the club, they're great, we got the stadium, there's a lot of excitement. Okay, we're not in first place, but
Yet.
yet, I like that. Kathy, that's great. That's great. You know, no wonder you won a lot of elections. But it worked when you think of all the people that voted for the club. They were going to be taxed. They were, and there, you know, it was a big number that were baseball fans. But there were a lot of people that, were so-so. But Denver, fortunately, was populated by so many people from Chicago, St. Louis, all these major league cities. Come to Denver, you know, make your fortune, supposedly, find a parking space, and Major League Baseball just fit into this whole mindset. And so, gosh, it's so that's why I say it's a victory lap. A lot of people, if you talk to somebody in Miami, you know, Denver's got funny air, and you talk to somebody else, and you know, they're a bunch of, they ride trains and carry funny things, and all they really want to do is ski. Well, get real. But I think there's a lot of thanks that, gosh, it's so many people, but I think the first thanks should be to the Colorado Baseball Commission members. You know, it was these guys that helped promote the building and the financing of Coors Field, including you guys. You know, this is it just wasn't going to happen. And like you're saying, it was no one person. Gosh, it was a small army that continued to grow and grow and grow. And it took a team effort, and that's what baseball's all about, is a team effort. So, and I want to thank my boss and friend, John DeQ, who worked continuously in the 1970s to bring a major league expansion club, and this was an expansion club, to Denver. He purchased the Denver AAA Bears to promote his efforts, and he wanted to use that as a platform to create an entry to Major League Baseball. So it gave him instant recognition, credibility, and, you know, John, he was a jock in himself. You know, he was all-city football player. He was, I think he was a Golden Glove boxer when he was quite young. And, you know, all the DeQ family were just great jocks. And anyway, John, when he purchased the Denver club and renamed it the Zephyrs, you know, was a key ingredient. Another person I want to thank, and I think we all should thank, is my dad, who built Bear Stadium back in World War II. World War II, I mean, we're talking, you know, the late 40s. And he built it out of concrete because there was restriction on nails. You couldn't purchase certain amounts of steel, and there was still issues with nails because they had been using that in the war, and there were all kinds of legal restrictions and all that. And he built this big, found a location over where Mile High was, that it was like a bowl, and so he just filled that with concrete. Originally about 11,000 seats, and then kept expanding that with time. But gosh, it had a great view of Denver, and it was in a good position for the batter's eye. You know, they wouldn't get blinded. There were not wind issues, and they eventually expanded that thing when they put in the moving stands to about 75,000. But in his day, it was 11,000, and then they expanded it to 14,000. And I worked as a bat boy out there for a period of time. I was more of a field, I don't want to say a runner or whatever, but I would carry the hoses around. And, you know, we didn't have a lot of mechanism. And I remember I thought, let's get modern, folks. And I put the hose on this little tractor, and I thought, hey, I'll just carry this out to center field. And of course, I snapped the hose, because it was so heavy, and anything with that much power. And so my father had second thoughts about having me work on the ground crew. But it was great. So he had me clean out the dugouts. Now, that was what do you call it? Penance? Dugouts were basically railroad ties that were put in the dugout. And in those days, of course, our ball players all would chew tobacco. And the whole place was just filled up with tobacco, what do you want to call it? Tobacco spit. And so anyway, for my problem with the watering, I got to scrape all that off of, and I did it in good spirit. I mean, I was just happy he didn't make me pay for those hoses. But anyway, that was a life in the minor leagues. After Dad, and I was telling you that story about he got the club, he bought it when it was at Merchants Park, which was on Broadway. It's an old wooden stadium. Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig had some of their home run hitting contests. It was, it was a long-time baseball field, but Merchants Park was also a fire trap, or at least my parents thought it was a fire trap, and my grandfather. And so my grandmother used to carry a bucket of sand and pick up any lit cigarette butts that were underneath, just to prevent, during that final season, with with this crazy wooden ballpark that had been around for, gosh, well, it had to be there, what, in the 20s or maybe even earlier. Yeah, good old Merchants Park. So the location that Bear Stadium was built was great because the Valley Highway drove right by it, so you could get all that visibility. And you had a lot of land, and where the land my family bought was actually a city dump. And so they cleaned that out, put this on the trucks, and had that slope and built that, wonderful backing. It didn't have bleacher seats. Everything was first level, and I think I told you that it was about 14,000 seats. Eventually, until they added those moving seats. But anyway, the stadium, of course, was later expanded and was called Mile High, and you guys know the history of that. And then my pop, he went on to celebrate, or to have it was a celebration, a successful Major League Baseball career won a World Series with the St. Louis Cardinals. And then he went on to the Cincinnati Reds, where he won back-to-back World Series, which, wow, that's great stuff. And of course, I got to go to a bunch of those games, and it was amazing. That whole town was just, and those were the years of the Pete Roses and the Johnny Benches and all those great Cincinnati. Sparky Anderson was the manager. Sparky became National League Manager of the Year with the Reds, and then later on with the Detroit Tigers. I mean, you talk about these guys that were just great in their field, and they could just cut through and get to the heart of the thing. I also wanted to thank my dad for giving me an opportunity to use my marketing skills, because I was a New York advertising guy, and I loved, of course, sports and sports promotion. And so I got the job as marketing director of the Cincinnati Reds. And I was happy to do that because I was thinking, oh boy, am I smart. I come from New York, yeah. And but it did work out, and among the things that we did was I put Pete Rose on the cover of the Wheaties cereal boxes. And of course, one of my clients was General Mills back in those days. Hey, I call these guys up. How do you want to use Pete? And they said, how much are we going to have to pay? And I go, that's a bad question, But I talked Pete into the visibility. Gosh, here's Pete all over Wheaties boxes in every grocery store in America, you know. And he's a wild man, and actually a great guy. But so we had Pete. I had Johnny Bench running around in some kid sneakers, and then probably one of the big things was that I helped get the 1988 Major League All-Star Game in Cincinnati, and of course that's big bucks, and you know, helps the economy, and that was just a great event. Gave them that visibility. So those were just some kind of highlights of that particular stay. And then when John asked me to come to Denver as president and general manager, you know, he wanted me to help, of course, get the Denver Zephyrs a Major League Ball club, and I was ready. And the goal, when I came to Denver, was to show that Denver was ready. You know, I was ready to leave Cincinnati, and hey, Denver's ready to go. And the first thing was to demonstrate Denver's interest in Major League Baseball.
So what year was this?
And oh my gosh, let's see. This was in about '86, I think, and so the way we strategized was, if we can get these big major league exhibition games here, the owners get to see us, they get to see the crowds, instead of just talking on paper. Hey, when you have the world champion Minnesota Twins, they won the World Series in 1987, so that 86 is a good date, Neil. And then we also had the Chicago Cubs. Everybody loves the Cubs, of course. The Padres, the Toronto Blue Jays. Unfortunately, the New York Yankees game was snowed out. You know, we were doing it at the very beginning, before the season started, and hey, springtime in Colorado, the Rockies, you know, it's snow, and I remember, oh gosh, I even got to talk with His Highness George Steinbrenner, and he said, I'm flying around, we're looking at this Denver deal. He says, everything's covered with snow. What are you talking about? I said, snow, I said, it's only 12 inches. We'll have that cleared up. 12 inches? Oh my gosh, we're going to have guys breaking their legs, breaking their backs, hurting their arms, everybody getting sick. He said, forget it. And off his plane goes. You know, he was just circling around. That was Steinbrenner. And Steinbrenner kind of reminds me of somebody else nowadays. But Steinbrenner actually was great and helped me with a couple of things later on in my life. But the Denver Zephyrs produced some major league, of course, those exhibition games, which made people believers. You know, gosh, we'd fill up the stadium. We had the big clubs here, and that was just great. And we were, you know, with Denver's attendance and enthusiasm, we were making people believers, because the guys that ran the Cubs, you know, they saw the enthusiasm. I think it was Andy McPhail, and he used to run, I think, the Yankees, and his dad was president of the American League. So those type of connections we were trying to build, and they were believing this, and that was just another inside kind of effort to win over some people and win some advocates. And so we had the teams here, but we also had a future stadium funding tax necessary. And that's where I think, Neil, you came through with the 1/10, the 1% tax, which really was the same as our art tax. And that was genius, and of course John loved that idea, and thanks to Neil, it was something we could run with. And 1/10 of 1%, it was our cultural facilities district tax, I think, is the formal name. Anyway, we needed that support, and so we needed to come up with some other creations. We couldn't just, okay, the major league guys were at the beginning of the season, what about in the middle? And we had the Beach Boys, and they were a roaring success. I mean, everybody loved the Beach Boys. I mean, they were America's, America's band, if you want to call it. And then we did some of these afternoon crazy productions. We had business person specials, not businessmen, business persons. We were ahead of our time, supposedly. Of course, and then I backtracked because when we had those, they were in the afternoon on Wednesdays. The sun was great. What a place to get a tan. And of course, we talked that thing up. And then I had this thought about, wait a minute, all this sun, all this tanning that could go on. Let's get some suntan sponsors. Also, do a deal where if you wear a bikini or a swimsuit, you get a free hot dog or or you get in at half price. People were showing up like that. It was really goofy, and I didn't believe that was going to work, but it did. And then we had, and it was fun because we had cell phones, and the earliest vintage cell phones. We were carrying those around, and if you had to call your boss and tell him that you were out with a client, that was one of the favorite excuses while you were at the ball club. And you just said, oh, I'm with your client. Of course, you invited your client. He didn't know where it was, but it didn't matter. You're having a great time. And so anyway, that was, and I can't remember the name of the cell phone, but I think that Barry Hirschfield was connected to that cell phone company.
Right, Motorola.
Well, and it was great. She had guys, it was just great. And then, of course, we had TV cameras walking around, photographing people, and you didn't want your boss to see you, so people were ducking under, and we had some issues there. It was just kind of a crazy time, but it was fun. And also, the Z's promoted the largest single game in minor league baseball, and that was our 4th of July, extravaganza, and we'd have 40,000, 50,000 people. Hey, the major leagues didn't even have that. This was great, and it woke a lot of people up. But we still had to broaden the audience and get those potential voters behind this whole thing. And you guys, with the baseball commission, everybody in all the neighborhoods was making things happen. Interviews, the KLZs, the KOAs, the whatever was going on, was building a tidal wave, we thought, of enthusiasm. There were some naysayers. They didn't want to, pay this tax and all that. But this was a vote in Denver, and so to increase interest besides fireworks and Beach Boys and things, and to broaden this, the Zephyrs enrolled as a founding member in a statewide Hispanic lobbying organization. And, this was in North Denver. The neighborhood was half Hispanic. My wife speaks Spanish, all these kind of things that made a lot of sense. And so we broadcast Zephyr games bilingually. We had a booth that was totally in Spanish, and of course we were doing it with Norm Jones in English. And so this really, I think, made us a lot of friends. The result was that the Hispanic community, and I think this figure is correct, is that in the greater Denver area, you have approximately 300,000 Hispanic, as a population group. Well, you get these people to vote, and they do vote. And bammo, that sent us over, and they voted overwhelmingly, in a way, support the stadium tax to build Coors Field and to tax themselves. But when you have Andres Galarraga and all these guys from with Spanish surnames, it was perfect. And so on April 9th, 1993, oh boy, was that exciting, 80,227 fans, the largest crowd to see a single regular season Major League Baseball game, occurred. I was sitting with my dad, and we were just loving this whole thing. And Eric Young steps to the plate. Whammo! There it goes. It's out of here. Wow! In the first inning. And to me, this was the omen from above. And so, anyway, the Rockies, they're off. We're cheering. We love them. And you know, I don't think we can do anything better than that.
So did you go back to Major League Baseball, to any of the meetings and talk to the owners?
Oh, yes, yeah.
And what did that involve?
And they, you know, my dad was a big pusher of that because he knew all the guys. He'd worked with them for, what, 20-some years? I mean, with the Cardinals, with the Reds. He'd had a great track record. So he was known as a major league guy, but he was coming in talking up Denver. And he was born in Denver. And then his family moved down to the San Luis Valley, and where his father was a beekeeper. So he has these really interesting roots from Denver to La Jolla, Colorado, and that's down in the valley. And that's where Coronado came through in some very early days. And this was magic for him. And he really, I remember as a kid when he was, he played on a baseball team, the La Jolla whatevers, and around the baseball stadium when it got too dark, they surrounded the field with all their cars and turned on their headlights so they could, you know, get in those last extra innings. So anyway, this goes back a number of years and has been exciting. And did I say that about, you know, one of the things that when he was trying to get Major League Baseball in the 60s with Branch Rickey, and of course Branch was a maverick, he was also a legend, and he also was a consultant with St. Louis and was an important person to have on your side. You know, we didn't get it, and that was like about, you know, 1960, but as a consolation prize, my dad was also trying to bring, you know, pro football here. And so he's the founder of the Denver Broncos. And so you win some, you lose some, but I think Denver's, you know, in the long run, wins totally.
So was he involved in any efforts in the 60s and 70s? Any other efforts to bring Major League Baseball
here? Yeah, because he was doing, Neil, he was either at St. Louis or Cincinnati, and he was talking up when Denver came up, and he would introduce John to a few of the guys, and you know, the owners are interesting people. They go to these meetings, I don't know, they chomp a few cigars, and then they keep looking at their watch. They want to figure out, I got to catch a plane. How do you catch a plane? You have a meeting that just started, you know. So it was kind of crazy, but you know, these were good times, and my father would take John around and introduce him to people, and you know, and John in his very humble way would shake hands, and they said, "Gosh, you came all the way from Colorado to meet us in Cleveland? That's, you know, that's terrific." And so I think little by little all this was sinking in, and it was establishing a name, a town, and of course my dad was with Cincinnati, so he couldn't represent the Reds, but he was like a witness to its sports, you know, enthusiasm and success.
So let me just kind
Sure.
of reiterate that your dad is Robert Howsam Sr.
Right.
And that your grandfather
Mm-hmm.
was Ed Johnson,
Right.
former
Governor.
Governor.
Yes, 3-time governor of Colorado, and gosh, would that be 3-time U.S. Senator from Colorado, and you know, was a rancher out of north of Craig, Colorado, where there probably is more rattlesnakes per capita than you can imagine. And in fact, I went up with my grandfather, and he had a chauffeur-driven car, which was pretty cool, I thought. And when you're a little kid, that's neat. It's still neat. And Sergeant High was the chauffeur's name, and he was with the police force. And at that time, it was called the Courtesy Police.
Right.
And anyway, we walk out looking around at the homestead, which was actually made of mud. This this was interesting. You know, it was just sentimental on his part. Sergeant High says, "Hold it, everybody." Pulls out and shoots a rattler right through the head. And, you know, I'm thinking, oh my God, you know, how do we get out of here? Anyway, that's where he came and started his career. And I think that his career was built on the fact that his ranch, his farm area was north of Craig, up near the Wyoming, Utah border. And the roads were so lousy up there. So he became very sensitive and saw the importance of trade and roads. And if you have roads, trade happens. People can move around, it builds. And so one of the things that I think was ingrained in him was building roads. And he saw the importance of the railroad. And when I think of roads that he was involved in, you know, there's a road through a mountain up here, the Eisenhower-Johnson Tunnel, and that was one of his babies. And he got the appropriation for the feasibility study of about $16 million back then. And he went, I do remember this, it was in the state capitol, I was a little kid, I got to go with my parents, it was real cool. All these important people there. And you know, my grandfather, there was a debate about it, and we weren't sure how it was going to go. And he gets up on the podium, and he says, you know, he says, if they can build this in Switzerland, we can do this in Colorado. And he took his fist like this, and the place erupted, and they won the vote.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, but I remember he said, if they can do this in Switzerland, we can do this in Colorado. And that's why he was a politician, right?
Yeah.
So, yes.
Well, I know we owe a deep amount of gratitude to both you and your dad. I know your dad came and testified in several hearings on his own dime. And of course, the stadium issue itself did not have any funding. So, and I know that the committee members weren't always extremely polite to your dad or to Sam Simplizio, but they still kept their dignity and just continued to push the issue and do a great job.
Did you love Sam? Was he a great guy? And he was such a great athlete. You know, he was, I think, all-league quarterback for New Mexico when he was in college, and then was to be the next Mickey Mantle center fielder for the New York Yankees. He goes after a hard fly ball that goes against the fence. He tries to snag it. Bam, you know, breaks a couple bones and he's through.
And I understand was his replacement Joe DiMaggio?
No, Roger Maris.
Roger Maris.
Well, and my dad actually traded for Roger Maris and brought Roger from the Yankees to the Cards, and Roger had that great home run, you know, year.
Wow.
So these things go around and around. My dad knew that Roger, I think he was originally from Montana, and Roger and his brother went over to Coors when he was still with the Yankees, and they were investigating the possibility for a brewery. Well, they didn't get the Coors. My dad, of course, hears this. What is Roger looking around for? And he hears the story. So Dad goes to Mr. Bush, Augie Bush Sr., and says, hey, I think we got a chance to get Roger. He wants a franchise. He wants a beer franchise. Are you willing to offer him a franchise? And Mr. Bush says, gee, tell me how I do this, Mr. Howsam, or Bob. You know, they were, and it happened.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, so because some inside, if you want to call it, let's don't call it dope, that's a tough word.
Inside
nowadays.
baseball.
Yeah, inside baseball. I like that, Kathy. I know you're a politician, PR person. And that's what made it work. And Roger had that great year, and it was one of my father's great trades.
So I don't know if it was the end of the 70s or the beginning of the 80s.
Mhm.
Maybe it was the 70s that Marvin Davis was talking about
Mhm.
buying a team. How did
Mhm.
the Howsams feel about Marvin Davis buying a major league
Well,
team?
I think Marvin called my dad up and, tried to get some insight on what was going on and told him, I'd like you to be my general manager. And, my dad already had a job, so, but he liked Marvin Davis, and, here was a go-getter. And anyway, he could have been a great owner, along with some other people. And of course, Jerry McMorris is the one that ended up, and we were lucky to have him. Class guy. We had some other people that wanted to be owners, and that ran into some controversy about their background. Here's Jerry McMorris, Colorado businessman, great guy. Here was people from other parts of the country, and not that we're talking about carpetbaggers, but they weren't Colorado guys. Not that, I guess we are somewhat biased, prejudiced, or whatever, but Jerry was terrific, just terrific. And his wife Mary is another, standout. They were just a great couple representing Colorado in baseball, and made us all proud.
So one of the other things, challenges, I think, in terms of getting a tax issue passed and getting a major league team and finding an owner was the deep recession that Colorado was in at that time.
Yep.
Do you have any particular
Well,
recollection?
yes, I sure do, because what was it, about 86?
83 it started.
83, and then it carried on, and I think unfortunately it affected John too, because he had all this property, and I think, to just keep things going, I think he had to sell some of the property, but it did slow things down, but we got over it, and I know it was tough on the DeQ family.
Well, I know one of the stories that we heard from Federico and Neil was that when Federico became mayor of Denver, he decided to start a Denver Baseball Commission. Did you have any interaction with the Denver Baseball Commission?
No, I didn't. I'm trying to think of what year that would have
It was
been.
83.
83, yeah. I was 83. Where was I? I was either in New York or Cincinnati. But I thought that the mayor just gave this youthful image to Colorado, and he's out there jogging around and all this. This is crazy. Got his wife jogging around with him. He's kind of like Superman. I just thought that he fit the mold, and that probably wave of image making was in a way important for, again, Denver. This young millennial city, so to speak, and it was a can-do place, and Pena was, he certainly loved sports, and he's the kind of guy we liked. And wait a minute, we had Governor Romer talking about another gentleman, another governor that was important to our efforts. And I remember Governor Romer going out throwing the baseball, representing, what was it, Hawley, Colorado, or something like that, where he was originally from. And he was great. We just had, I think people saw baseball as not only big league, but as a clean sport, family sport, a way to build tourism for Denver and Colorado. And I live part-time down in the Springs. Boy, after a Rockies game, the cars are, it's a mess. But on the other hand, we have the feeling, hey, they went to baseball games, because you see little kids in the cars, and they're wearing Rocky hats, and you know where they've been. And so we know they've been having fun in Denver, and that's great.
So, well, we really know too that the Rockies are a regional team.
Mhm.
Were the Bears also a regional team, do you think?
I'd have to, I mean, you know, our home base was here, where our promotion was, but because of the radio stations, and I think they were on KLZ, it had, what is that? Is that a 50-watt, 1,000?
KOA is.
KOA is, right. That, you know, it certainly encompassed Colorado, and I think in places like Wyoming, you would get people down from Cheyenne. So you did get the Wyoming and some of the New Mexico people. But somehow, when I think of some fans that I've talked to, they were from Kansas. A lot of people from Kansas, and when they got tired of ribs, I guess they want to come to Denver and have our buffalo steak.
Or something.
Yeah, something.
Well, do you have any final thoughts about the whole process?
Oh.
How it all works?
Well, I think you guys are geniuses. and yeah, but I'm serious. To go ahead and take this and make it happen, you know, this is, in a way, once in a lifetime experience. I mean, nothing wrong with a pizza stand on the corner, but this is big time. Hey, we're in the national scene and where we should be. You know, Denver did deserve Major League Baseball. It was a town that was waiting for it to happen. I know that there was always the tagline, "Oh, Denver's a cow town," and that used to set off everybody in my family right through the, you know, not that they're against cows, but and we do like the Western jamborees and all those things, but it was ready to, I think, be a major player in the rest of the country. You know, especially when you look at our airlines, the headquarters, how we were growing. Look at our you know, our airport out there that you know, people had questions about. Gosh, do we want to pay those taxes? And we were lucky that we were able to get I think it's the Combs family ranch. They owned all this land out there, and I knew one of the kids, Tony, and you know, to get that type of flat land, you certainly couldn't have it down in Colorado Springs. Gosh, you'd have to cut down a few mountains, and no, this was just great. And so we keep having some of these really key things happen in Colorado. That airport, our baseball, our Broncos, you know, and hey, and we seem to be kind of a launching pad for a lot of beer companies, and so I'll drink to that.
I know one of the things we hear over and over about what a closed club Major League Baseball is, and how difficult it was to get any particular information out of them in what it was going to take to get a Major League team.
I think that's true. I think it is a closed club, you know, unfortunately. And you know, when you have some of these owners that do have a lot of money and don't have to answer to anybody, really, with the exception maybe the tax time once in a while. Yeah, it is their club, and there are some issues about who's going to succeed, and then you probably do have some of this insider trading, where, you know, a friend here has got another friend, and sometimes it works for you, and sometimes it doesn't. But it is, and I don't want to belittle it, but they have quite an investment, and they want to protect it. And also, by being somewhat of a closed club, I think you make it so exclusive that it increases demand. And so if they can raise the, you know, the admission, it helps them, and theoretically it'll help the rest of the league if they're wise in who they bring in. And boy, they certainly had a winning hand with Denver.
One of the other things that we certainly have heard is that Tampa St. Petersburg was in
Mhm.
competition with us for
Mhm.
one of the expansion teams, and
Right.
that they had already built a stadium, hoping that the White Sox, I think it was, would come down there. Miami was a hot market. Washington DC
Mhm.
had a team,
Mhm.
and did you ever have any fear that if we didn't pass the stadium tax, that we would probably be a long, long time without ever getting a team?
I think that's a real possibility. I think I remember John telling me, John DeQ, that we needed a stadium, that the commissioner of baseball said Denver needs to have, I think it was Bart Giamatti said, you guys got to have a stadium. And that just pointed John in getting Neil to come up with some great ideas and promote this whole thing. Somehow, if we didn't have a stadium, we weren't going to get it. Even though we had a big, if you want to call it, football, baseball stadium, and I think that was good advice. And then frankly, our football stadium was too big for baseball. You know, like you like that 50,000 seat facility. You do want a couple people waiting in line to get tickets. If it's empty, if you're in Cleveland, you know, heck, you can have, I don't know, any kind of celebration in left field. Nobody's there. And so, again, it's that supply and demand. And I think that was really good advice. And maybe it might seem a little extreme, but it worked in our favor. And we just had to, you know, pay up or shut up.
So as a promotions and marketing guy, I know that the ownership group asked for some additional seats, and since then, they've taken those additional seats and made a party deck.
Right.
What do you think about that change?
I think that party deck is great. I do. You know, I'm kind of a sun and fun guy. Have a beer. I mean, you know, everything's up there. The whole thing, the view. You know, lovely baseball fans of all sorts, and you know, I think it's great. And in fact, while you took those away, you still have center field. And I've had kind of a habit. I think it's fun. Is to go to a baseball game, and we have a little place over near Little Raven Street in Cherry Creek, and I'll go and I'll just get one of those center field cheap seats. Gosh, it's a riot. I'm just sitting around. I love seeing the people. What's going on? It's crazy. But you got to pay attention. Somebody may hit one out there, so I sit up real high, you know, drinking beer. I don't want to be killed. But it's great, and I think that was a very smart move. I think any way you can make the stadium more comfortable and add something to it, and I think sometimes those seats, if you're way up there, are not that great. I mean, who's watching the game? Everybody's watching the girls and the guys, you know, and it's just fun. And that's the way the sun comes across, and you know, it's like Miami Beach without the sand, but so what?
Well, I forgot what I was going to say. You enraptured me with your description of whatever. So overall, baseball's been very good for.
Baseball's been very good to me, as somebody would say.
Yeah.
And you know, yeah.
Well, we appreciate your and your father's great contributions to making it all
Well,
happen.
I do think some of those key guys, and yeah, my dad was real important because it's kind of he was a classic insider. You know, he's talking to
Planting
his buddies.
seeds a long time
Yeah.
ago.
And a long time, and yeah, and there was quite a history, and he had a lot of history with, you know, some of his buddies, and
Yeah, those state representatives and senators really enjoyed listening to what he had to say during the committee
Absolutely.
hearings.
Absolutely.
well, he could cut through, you know, a lot of stuff, and he had been through the drill. He had actually worked back in Washington for my grandfather at a brief period when he got out of the Navy, and but he really didn't like Washington, and all the
All that it brings with it.
yes, yes, right. So he was happy to come back to Colorado, and this was a time that after World War II, a lot of new things were happening, and
A lot of growth.
and so much. The growth, new ideas. The country was there was this new energy, the housing that was being built. But there were still so many opportunities, and so if you did have a vision, you could make it happen. And those were great times. And of course, these are great times too. So
Yeah.
what's the next big thing, Neil?
Yeah. So is it hard for you to believe that Coors Field is now the third oldest baseball park in
That
the
blows,
National League?
no, I don't get it. It is. It's totally like, what? I'm not even sure I believe you.
It's true, it's true.
I'm not sure I believe myself. But you can never be totally sure what politicians are telling you.
Right.
Great, well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Yes, this was not the Inquisition. This actually was fun.
Well,
thanks to you guys.
And I think, it's going to be fun for the people who watch it.
Yes.
I think they have no idea, and I think it will do nothing but fill them with joy.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, there's just so many thousands of these people made this happen. I mean, and all these screwy deals we had at the ballpark. You had 3,000 people, but they were, of course, all voting for it. But they also had friends, and some of my friends. I don't remember. Did you ever know Lou Cady?
Oh, yeah,
Gosh, I loved
yeah,
him.
I knew him well.
Yeah.
He
God.
did everything first.
He did. The guy was a genius. I mean, he went to East High, went to Brown. He had a lovely wife. I don't know. I miss him. And he loved baseball. And there's Greg Akiyama, who was I think an art director for the Post, or the Rocky. I can't remember. I mean, just all these guys, and everybody's just pushing ahead for it. And Lou was always coming up with ideas. Robert, we gotta increase the height of the fence. There's gonna be too many home runs. Hey, Lou, people like home runs. Come on, it's exciting. It's
You gotta
exciting.
have a few.
Yeah, right. They get a
Yeah.
free baseball. Come on. No, gosh, he was so great.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that your dad got to see
Oh,
a
yeah.
home run
Oh, he was.
with Major League Baseball.
Well, it was a home run, and it was. I remember sitting. You guys fixed us up with some great seats behind home plate, and I don't know who we were sitting next to. Some friends, I guess. One guy's John Medved was a friend of the family's, and my dad bends over to say something. I'm sitting right in between. There is on page 2 of the Rocky Mountain News this great picture of my dad, and of course it blocks me out totally.
But that is you.
That is me, right? And he's talking to his friend John Medved, and it blocks us both out. And anyway, those things happen. But it was
Well-
worth it. I mean, I remember when Eric, when he hit that ball, we just couldn't believe it. Here it was, and we had some kind of. It was some threatening weather at first, and then it just cleared like magic. It was meant to be.
I would say.
It was the perfect day.
We just didn't know it was meant to be
Well-
while we were going through all the machinations of trying to make it happen,
Yes,
right?
well, and it was so great, and it was like this year, went to opening day, and sitting behind home plate again, great seats. And this young kid, from a Denver high school, gets up. What is it, Jefferson High? I'm trying to think of
Oh,
the,
maybe Thomas Jefferson?
maybe it's Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
And for 6 innings, he's got we beat the Dodgers. It was like, and the fans are going nuts, and they're so cheering, and it's just a great feel. And when the innings started, he was a little nervous, obviously. It's his first major league game. He's 23 or 24 years old. And 2 guys got on, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, don't groove one. Because he grooves it
what
and it's
happens,
out, right. And somehow a guy popped it up, and the next one grounded out. There and of course it started out and 1 out, and he got through that first inning, and it was like, your whole career depended on that first inning in a way. I mean, it would have just ruined your confidence. You'd have been taken out, I really don't belong here. Who knows? Boy, he belongs here. Anyway,
It's been a good year.
yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Good
Robert.
year.
Well, you guys are just